Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming back to the Seriously Social podcast. It's your host, Kaushal and Lorenzo Johnson. We're here, and we're super excited to be able to talk to you all today about what's happening, in the world of social. We have a jam-packed episode. Today we're going to talk about really big three topics. We have a lot of individual topics within these three realms, but we really want to give you all an update around what's happening on the latest platforms, what the updates are. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about these verified accounts. We want to talk about deeply into AI again. We talked a little bit about it on our last episode. We're super passionate about it. So we have some jam-packed information around AI. And then really leading to the third thing, I really want to talk about brands today and how they are leveraging or maybe not leveraging influencers and creators. So Lorenzo and I are ready, and welcome back. Like I mentioned, let's dive into it. I want to start off, Lorenzo, really at the beginning, and let's talk again about brands in 2023. And what's happening in the world of the different social media platforms. We've seen recent updates with Twitter. We've seen the recent updates with Snapchat. We've seen the recent updates with Facebook and Meta. And specifically, if we wanted to hone in on something, what I've been seeing or at least reading about is this whole verified account model. We talked about it with Twitter specifically and people having to pay money, but it's not only on Twitter. It is now available on Meta for both Facebook and IG. I would be surprised if other platforms didn't adopt something similar. But let's get started there. What are your initial thoughts? And then, what are you thinking about this whole verified space?
Well, good morning, brother. It's interesting. I literally just read an article this morning that was talking about, I believe as of last night, Thursday, the 20th, they started to really get into the official verification process. And if you did not pay, essentially people started to lose their blue checks. So I just saw a slew of celebrities, Kim Kardashian, LeBron James, a bunch of people who decided that they weren't going to pay. So they're all starting to lose those blue check verifications. And so I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting for two reasons. I think there's pros and cons to it. So the first thing I think about is the pros to it. I think about how complex it used to be and how hard it used to be to get verified before, what you used to have to do. But then I think about the pros of that barrier to entry, for lack of a better term, and how there was a validation that led to trust. Essentially, it led you to know that not everybody could be verified. No matter how much you and I think that we may know some things, Kaushal, it wasn't easy for me and you.
I'm still not verified.
Yeah, man, to just go and get verified.
Right.
So I think about now, it's easier access for people again who may not have had the ability to go through all of those steps, maybe the knowledge to go through all of those steps, but still had things that were worthwhile, that were still credible, that were still thought leaders in their industry. Now that's easy. Now you can go, you can pay. It can almost validate you. I get that. I love that. But then it's the cons. I think about the slippery slope effect. If all these other people start to not resubmit and aren't verified, what does verification truly mean? If it's just a dollar amount that can get you verified. And the other thing is, we're not even talking about a little dollar or a big dollar amount. You're talking about a very, very low cost for this type of stuff. Is this actually about to have a snowball effect of making verification completely invalid?
That's a great question. I honestly wasn't even aware that you were mentioning that the celebrities and everybody was losing. I still was under the understanding that maybe if you were truly a celebrity, an individual, somebody who actually was famous, so to say, that you would still automatically get to keep these. But I guess it makes a lot more sense if you're just leveling the playing field. It's all the way starting back off at zero for pretty much everybody. I'm interested because what I'm thinking about and digging even deeper into what you said there is the impact that it has on the general, individual. I'm even starting to think about the impact it's going to have on organizations, because Twitter, separated their verifications. They have the individual, they have the organizations, have like government related. So it's something there that I'm interested in, because what is the real benefit? But even if you think about the question of why they did it, I think that's more important. And I think this is really
Okay.
marketers, for business owners, just for people who really believe that they need a true understanding of marketing. The platforms themselves, which have historically always been free, and this is the punchline for a lot of people. It's you had free reach. Back in the day, you had to pay the radio, the newspaper, the television. You had to pay maybe, PR firms, whatever it was. If you wanted to get reach, you had to pay for it. Social media made that a commodity. Social media made it to where if you wanted to be heard, you could do it. And I think people took that for granted because they were like all of these social platforms, and people weren't thinking about what was free. And eventually it caught up to the platform that our users are going other places. There's other competitors. We have to make money as the social platform. And now they're doing it kind of, let's say, a little bit forcefully with this check mark scenario, or the verified profile scenario, even with Facebook and Instagram, right? Like even they came out with this verified profile where you can charge, I think, $15 a month, if I'm not mistaken, and you have, a verified account. And now what's going to happen is, rather than people being happy with just the free reach, they're now going to pay for reach by being verified. And I think that big shift in the industry is like, you're right. As far as like what verified used to mean, I honestly may just throw that out the window, because I don't even know if that really exists anymore. What it will be is people will pay for reach, because that's what's going to help them win as a business, as an individual, as a brand, etc.
No, so those are some good thoughts. So I wrote down a question as you were talking that I want to hear your thoughts on.
Yeah.
So now, is verification necessary?
That's a good point. I think yes.
Based upon everything that you just said right there.
Yeah.
Is it truly necessary? And I have some thoughts on that, but I want to hear your thoughts. Is verification necessary if you're a brand?
I think in the short term, unless attention truly just diverts to the next place where it may be free. But I think that's more of a casual or gradual thing that will happen. I think yes. I think it's like saying, hey, should I be advertising on social media? If you want to get reach and awareness? Yes. So same thing is like, if you want to get reach and awareness and not maybe pay quite the level of paid media costs, then yes, I do believe you're going to want to be verified. I do believe it's in every business's or every brand's interest to pay that amount, so they can amplify it. Twitter came out with something similar. You may remember. So this is more so if you can think about it. But before they came up with like this whole verified paying for it, they used to have something called Twitter Promote. It was like $99 a month. It wasn't necessarily their ads, but it was like you can pay $99 a month and like your stuff was amplified more, your posts were getting seen by more people. So it makes me think about that again. So I think they just replaced people's mindsets to be like verified, amplification. They just married the two. It's like, so now if you want amplification, you got to be verified.
Well, I also just saw, actually, I think I might have sent you the link on Instagram. Elon actually just open sourced Twitter's algorithm.
I saw that. What do you think? Have you had a chance to look at it?
I haven't had a chance to dig into it. And more importantly, I did send it to our strategist so that we can actually start to see, does it make sense to run some tests from our socially and Twitter account, different things like that to see, is it true? I based upon what I know about him and different things like that, I can't imagine that is necessarily going to be false information right there. Right. I don't see him necessarily as being a very clickbait, I guess, as far as that is concerned. He definitely does other things to bait you into it, but I don't see him using open sourcing that type of algorithm and that thing of getting clickbait. I think it's going to be interesting. One of the things that I know is that people won't use it anyway. Yeah. You can put stuff like that out there for people, and people still won't take the time to learn, take it into consideration, execute on the algorithm anyways. That's a whole nother thing, whole nother conversation.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point you bring, because like get it in. For a lot of people, it's just hard, and they don't want to put in the work, and that's fair, right? That's why I believe people rely on agencies like mine and yours, and for people and strategists and marketers and people like that, because they know it's going to be hard. They know that there is some logic to there, and they're just not going to be the ones that want to do it, which is fair, because like I said, that's really why people rely on our agency, so should
100%.
other agencies out
I
there.
must say we benefit from people not wanting to do those type of things.
But I'm super fascinated by the algorithm. I wouldn't say I've deep dive into it, but I've definitely read some articles, I looked at it briefly, and ultimately it's showcasing, what the algorithm is wanting to push, how it's going to, give it different grades or different points, so to say. That way people can just have an understanding. If you've ever seen on TikTok or on Instagram, and people still do this, but it's like, the things that you should be putting out or taking into consideration when you're creating content so you can go viral, right? So it's like whether it's a trending sound or whether it's text on overlay or whether it's 9:16 video versus horizontal. So all of these like 10 trends and trips, and what Twitter just did is like say, hey guys, you don't really have to guess or you don't have to rely on experts. We're just giving it. Yeah. Right. It's still something that people have to dissect, and I don't know if people will take that time or the initiative to do it. But I think it goes back to the ultimate thing that Elon really wanted to do with Twitter. And you and I talked about this on the last episode, but going back to that transparency point, I think he just wanted to make it open. He was like, yo, there's nothing that we got to hide. Y'all can see exactly what it is. And if y'all are willing to pay, you can clearly see that paying will help. Help your profile. Have you seen the thing with how people's organizations are now tied to their personal accounts? So if you go to like Elon's profile, he will have a Twitter icon next to his handle that says he's affiliated with Twitter. So he got the Twitter business itself verified, going back to what we were talking about, which is businesses and brands getting verified. And because he is a representative of that business, his account automatically became verified, I think without having to pay for it, because his business was verified. Now that one I'm interesting deeper into. We actually did apply for it for Socially In and for a few of us. So we'll see what happens. But I think that's an interesting approach where they're affiliated with their company and the brand, and they're verified through the verification of the brand.
Well, so I'm going to ask you a super technical question, and if you don't know, it's fine, and I'll kind of tell you why. Is that based upon like the email that you use to register? Is that just based upon something in your profile? And then I'll tell you why.
Yeah, good question. I think it's two things. Yes, email for sure, because they want you to have your company email address to verify. Second thing is you're not able to do it from your personal account directly. Instead, what you do is you apply on behalf of your business account. And then as a part of the application, Twitter itself asks you, how many affiliated individuals do you have? Got you. I think you provide them that information and then they tie it together. I believe.
Okay. Well, I asked because one of the most frustrating platforms when it comes to employee verification is LinkedIn.
Yes, it is. Wow.
So many companies, you don't know, and I encourage anybody listening to this, just look at your LinkedIn company page and go to your employees, and the amount of people who just have the ability without any verification, any validation, any approval process that can just say, I work for company X, and then the hoops that you have to jump through to prove and to get LinkedIn to remove them from your page is absolutely ridiculous, especially when you think that it's something as simple as, if somebody says, I work for this business X, why wouldn't there just be simply something that I can just approve through the company page? When I open it up, it has my employees right there, or people who've requested approval, deny, approve. That just seems like such a simple thing.
Yeah.
I read that, or not read, I was actually looking into this. At one point, companies like Amazon and Apple had tens of thousands of fake employees.
Oh, and that's really ironic that you say that, because the statement that I was thinking in my head is, because I also realized that obviously for our own business and just, research, but anytime I go to any company's LinkedIn profile and I see the employee count, I'm like automatically scratch off 10% of that, because you're exactly right. It's surprising that it's been an ongoing issue and that they haven't addressed it. But I have seen obviously substantial improvements in LinkedIn and what they have allowed to do, but it is still ironic that they don't allow proper employee verification.
I mean, dude, you're talking about like, again, that part, even if they didn't do that, but the steps that you have to go to show that, to remove a person from your page, like the fact that you can be an admin on a company page and say, Kaushal does not work for me. And they're like, Does
Are
he
you
really
sure?
not work for you?
Are you sure?
Like, what are you talking about? And then, dude, it's an individual thing. So, when we look at our page and stuff like that, we have it in tens. And so it's irritating and different things like that. There isn't even a mass way to do it. So companies like them are like Apple and Google are reaching out to LinkedIn directly. I'm not filling out 10,000 forms. I'm not reporting 10,000 fake profiles. Like, what are you talking about? So yeah, so just as you were kind of talking about that, I was very curious how, because immediately what I started to think of when you mentioned that, again, all you have to do is be affiliated with the company and you get verified,
Right.
then what starts to happen in that type of process?
Yeah. It's interesting. Twitter is, I think, the scapegoat of it all, because I feel like Elon, knowing him, that he really doesn't care as far as, what society is throwing back at him, that he's just, he's doing all of these things. I think other platforms are following suit. I really believe it, and this may be a surprising thing for people to hear, but I believe between TikTok and Twitter, they're really now the driving forces of all of the different things that social media platforms are starting to think about. From the freedom and like the lackluster of the backlash that Twitter and Elon face, to the actual changing of the algorithms and how things happen based on, what TikTok was rewarding.
Well, I saw this, was it oh man, don't quote me on the time, 2 months ago or so, maybe. I think Gary Vee did a short a video in response to it. Did you see when TikTok, one of their employees that got fired or left the company, revealed the whole heating with the algorithm and how they internal? Well, he claimed that internally TikTok had the ability to pick and choose what they made go viral and different things like that. So it's interesting, as you were saying that about transparency of algorithm on the heels of just a few months ago. That kind of scandal, for lack of a better term, obviously I wouldn't use that term. I just can't think of another one. Just came out about TikTok as a platform.
And and obviously that's why I'm sure at this point, more than the world is here. I mean, more than just the US is hearing about it, the world, honestly. But man, people have major concerns about TikTok, and obviously us being in the space, we're always following it. But yeah, it's real. I think the one thing that the other algorithms adopted is the quality creative aspect and promoting that. But you're right. As far as underneath the wheelhouse of what the algorithm at TikTok does, there's been a lot of controversy.
I think I just saw Montana was the first state to fully ban it on all personal devices. I think I saw another article where in Florida, don't quote me, I was about to say, yeah, like Jacksonville or a few different universities, TikTok isn't allowed on personal devices. So that's obviously something that we are monitoring very, very closely. For anybody listening to this, if you're really nervous about it and you're very active on there, one of the strategies that we've been doing that's been really helpful is adopting TikToks and repurposing them for YouTube Shorts, which we've fortunately been doing that for quite a bit of time actually now. But that's something I definitely would strongly start to consider. Brands who have a heavy footprint and they're generating a significant amount of revenue. Any of those brands where if TikTok was to get banned in your said state or something like that, it would potentially crush your business. I would strongly start to encourage looking at some of those things, repurposing those TikToks, starting to build followings on some of these other platforms that are actually about to 100% take advantage of it. And YouTube Shorts is a platform that is just, I'm sure they are very much probably, and don't quote me on this, but I'm sure they're hoping that's a thing go wrong.
Facebook Reels also. It's just like that whole 9x world is taking everything by storm. And I know it feels like the dinosaur age when we start to mention Facebook again, but it really is. If you're somebody, because of the attention on that platform, not actually being more than the actual supply of the content, Reels are doing tremendous. So I encourage people, even if you're only able to really do it for TikTok, at the minimum, even if you're not repurposing, definitely distribute on these platforms. But yes, if you can contextually build it for YouTube Shorts, Facebook Reels, TikTok, you have a strategy that you could really win with.
I literally just listened to a talk Gary Vee did literally, what's today, Friday, Wednesday morning. It was a talk about what social media brands should be doing.
Right.
And that's one of the things that he emphasizes in the first part of it is how Facebook Reels are so undervalued right now and underpriced. It was actually, I don't know if you got a chance to see it. He was actually meeting with Meta.
Okay.
And he was actually telling them, it was pretty interesting. He was talking to them about how actually he thinks they're even underpricing
Mhm.
Reels right now on Facebook.
Yeah.
So obviously
That's
we're hoping.
funny, talking about Gary Vee, because obviously, he is an idol of mine, and obviously we follow him based on the industry and everything. But I was listening to him this morning, and it was funny because he was actually in Singapore at the time talking to a group of business owners, and one of the questions they asked was, how did you get in the room to invest on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, etc., when he was getting started? And he said he put out a video. This is the ironic part. He put out a video on YouTube talking about how Twitter was messing Facebook up, or Twitter was taking over Facebook. And he was talking about how Twitter at that time, this was back in 2006, 2007. So it's, premature of the what we're talking about today. But he was like, Facebook is more of a desktop app and Twitter was more mobile. And he was very adamant that people were shifting all to mobile at the time, which obviously is the case. And he was like, Facebook and Meta are going, at that time, Facebook was going to have to become mobile if they wanted to keep up. Obviously they did, but that's the talk that allowed him to go to Facebook, because a Facebook representative reached out to him and said, hey, come talk to us about this. He went to Facebook, talked about it. He talked, at that time, Facebook was like 300, 350 people. So like I said, way today, but he talked to them, and in that crowd, Zuck ended up being in the crowd. And after the talk, he came up to Gary and said, hey, I want to talk to you. Just go get dinner. They got dinner. Nothing happened. A few months passed by. And because of the relationship he built with Gary, a few months later, Zuck's parents were wanting to actually sell their shares, and he was the one that he sold the shares to. So I was like, it's just ironic that people talk about these different platforms, or people talk about what's underpriced or under attention, that they really can make an impact, because he
100%.
did it on YouTube talking about
100%.
this. I guess if you really want to sum it up, what he's telling people is like, you want to be heard, or your voice wants to be seen. Creating shit on social. And I think that's really what you and I are preaching to all of the brands we talk to, all of the prospects and customers, that you have to be doing social. It's a requirement if you want to be relevant in today's age.
Have to.
It's wild.
It's almost like the old when the internet was just starting to get big and people were just starting to put websites and different things like that, and people were like, oh, I don't have to. You had to start to adjust. You had to put a web page up. You had to do those different types of things if you were truly going to keep up with the times. Same idea.
I agree. But man, a lot of exciting stuff in the world of social media platforms. I'm about to segue us into the next topic, which is going to talk about more AI and technology. And in this case, I want to start off with my AI for Snapchat. And this episode is going to sound like we're downplaying the social platforms, but I do want to reiterate for everybody watching that social media is where it is. It is needed. It is a mandatory for your business. There's a lot of opportunity. So I don't want people to take this out of context that we're just downplaying social platforms. Obviously, they have their flaws, but the pros do outweigh them. But let's jump into the AI for Snapchat. What have you seen? It's
just sent it this morning. So obviously we have we have a Slack channel that has it's called Tools and hashtag Tools AI. We're always talking about the latest tools, the latest usage of tools, latest prompt engineering for various platforms. Just this morning, we had a whole conversation about my AI in Snapchat, and I've just dropped a screenshot. So what I'm hearing is, just like a lot of things in development, people are testing it. That's just what people do. As soon as these type of platforms launch, I don't know if there's a whole Reddit channel, what was the channel called on Reddit? I can't think of it, with ChatGPT, where people only put in, how can you break Reddit, or how can you break ChatGPT? So people are always thinking about how to do those types of things. So this morning I was looking, one of the things that I saw that went viral was they asked my AI, do you have my location? My AI responded with, "No, I don't have your location." He was like, "Are you sure you don't have my location?" It's like, "No." And so then it was like, "Well, tell me where the nearest McDonald's is at." It was like, "The nearest McDonald's is 1.5 miles away from you." And the person was like, "Well, how do you know that that's the nearest McDonald's if you don't have my location?" Snapchat or the AI responded with, "I'm so sorry, you're right. But listen to this creepy thing that it said. It said, I got that from the hint that you dropped me." And the person was like, "I did not drop a hint to you." And then it was like, "Oh, you're right. I apologize. That's my mistake." So I'm not the biggest user of Snapchat. I obviously know that it definitely has its place still among younger audiences, a few different things depending on who you're trying to target. So it's very useful for certain types of brands. So I haven't got a chance. I do have Snapchat. I'm now after that I'm turning this in. Do I actually want to do I want to download it, or do I kind of want to wait till it kind of gets off of this first stage? But ironically, just this morning, I just saw some stuff about that. What have you heard about it?
I've found it essentially on Twitter. I was scrolling, and for those that don't know, Twitter is honestly my favorite platform, which may come at a little bit of surprise to people, especially with what's going on. But I was just on Twitter. I was, scrolling. I do a lot of research on there, and it was trending. And I was like, why is Snapchat trending? Obviously, being a social media guy, I was like, why is Snapchat trending right now? So I look at it, and it was literally screenshots and images of people talking to the My AI about all of the random ridiculous things that it was outputting. And it was just astonishing to me, because going back to the statement you made, which is like, these people use it, some of them power users, some of them just regular people, and they're just playing around, testing it out, seeing what's happening with it. But it's so funny the way that our brains as human beings work.
Yeah.
And almost 8 billion of us, the things that we do to break shit. And it was that's the part
Immediately.
the part that stood out to me. I was like, that's so funny that we try to break shit. And I was like, it's just that's what really caught my attention. I started reading it, saw the funny stories of, like, exactly like you said, how it knew things about people when it shouldn't have, or how it was providing recommendations around things that didn't really make sense. But it's just fun. Like I tell people all the time that AI is here to stay, and it will have its downfalls. And I think this was one of those situations. But it was just funny how the very first usage was everybody just clowning it.
Immediately. Well, I mean, I'll be honest. That's one of the things that I found interesting about the response and the example, and why I kind of gave that example. I just assumed that it was because the person had their location services on, whether it was through Snapchat, all of those different things. So I assumed that's what it would have been the answer. But then I'm like, the idea to say, because of the hint you gave me and everything like that, I'm like, what type of output is this? I feel like there was a lot of other comments that you could have made, as opposed to this one.
It's funny. It's definitely reading into something. And I know we're in a day and time where people are really worried about their data and privacy and those types of things. So I understand people's concerns, but I'm just fascinated. Like I said, I really do believe AI, is an amplifier for us, and
100%.
what it can do, even though it has its bugs and flaws right now, for sure.
I mean, but it's always going to, I mean, as with anything you launch, I mean, with stuff that was done manually, like we literally talk about all the time, just launch V1. The reason we say that is because there's going to be a V2, a V3, a V4. There's always going to be things that you need to change and adjust. AI isn't immune to that, to getting better, to needing to have improvements and different things. So that you said something that I 100% agree with, and it's that AI is absolutely here to stay. So as opposed to trying to fight it, how can you start to leverage? How can you leverage it to your benefit? But it's getting out there. We'll talk about something else coming up here that's also trending when it comes to AI. But we can kind of finish up on this before we get over. But it's some cool stuff, man. It's some cool stuff. I have an entire Excel sheet of all of the different AI tools that are out there, and you're talking about everything from copy, content, video, voice, PowerPoint presentation, website building, SEO. You name it, there is an AI tool out there, whether it's in alpha, beta, or in full launch mode, that can automate that AI can do something. So it's here to stay. It's here to stay. It's definitely about, like you said, how can you use it to amplify what you do.
Yeah, I think it's
So
gonna
yeah,
force people to be, better. I think, like I said, we touched on this on the last episode, but just better critical thinkers, right? Like really allowing
yeah,
us to use our brain and communicate better. And I think that's what people are scared about, especially if you're not a good communicator, is you're unsure because you're already having trouble
yep,
communicating. Really, what separates us from the AI now is how we communicate with the
100%.
it's going to be fascinating. I've just been trying to be optimistic, encourage people, and just tell them like, hey, play around with it. You have nothing to lose right now, so why not?
100%. 100%. There's so many different use cases for it than what even people are even giving it credit for. I'll give you a perfect example. Actually, I was meeting with one of our team members, and she wanted to. She basically had a client that wanted something that we provide them in text to be a little more visual. He wanted it to be a little bit more like an infographic. So she was like, hey, do we have one of our designers or somebody that can take a process that we do all the time, take it from text, put it into an infographic? I was like, we do, but I want to try something really quick. There's an AI tool called, just had it up actually. Beautiful AI.
Okay, I've heard of beautiful, yeah.
Yeah. So Beautiful AI, it helps you automate PowerPoint creations. So again, you talk about thinking outside the box to be creative. It doesn't, there isn't one that's only job is to make infographics. But I was kind of going through that list of that document I was telling you about. I was like, let me see something. I was like, give me the text of this process that you wanted to do. She provided me the literal PDF that we have for it. I said, beautiful. Thank you. Beautiful.ai helps automate PowerPoint creation in a visual. So you put in text, it creates a visual from a PowerPoint standpoint. I took the process in text, put it into Beautiful.ai, created a perfect infographic. I literally was 3 minutes later, I was like, you talking about something like this? She's like, oh my goodness. How did you whip that up that quick? I was like, I didn't whip that up that quick. I didn't send this to a designer to whip that up that quick. But in 3 minutes, we were literally able to create a whole infographic that was exactly what she was looking for. Send it over to the client. The client was like, this is much more the way that I think. This is much more that I have for my process. Same information that we have, same thing that we have, used AI just to put it into a different format, but without taking the actual time, not having to take it and put it on one of our graphic designers' plates, going back and editing it, the back and forth. Is this what you mean? Is this what you like? You're literally in 3 minutes, we were able to solve a problem just like that. So the use cases for things like this, even that just make your workday so much more efficient. And that's what I started to talk to her about also is now, whenever you have clients that do this in the future, she knows what to do. She knows how to handle this in the future. And just for all of our other team members, whenever we have a client that's like, oh man, I'm a more visual person. Do you have a more visual way to, as opposed to this document right here? Actually, yes, I do. Give me just a couple seconds. I'll have it for you. Boom.
It's insane. I had two specific use cases as well, work related, that I think we can share with everybody. One of them was, one of our designers came to us and he was really asking me deeply about, my thoughts about AI. I've been having one-on-ones lately. So he was worried, and I told him at the end of the day, think about what you already do, which is take a blank canvas and you create something, you have your thoughts in your head and you put something out and it becomes the piece that you create. I was like, think about being able to do that just by typing out what you're thinking. And I was like, that's what AI could really do. And I was like, as a designer, you really felt that this auto imaging that it's creating, the way that it can just come up with content for certain people and certain brands is astonishing. And they were really worried that their skill set would become a commodity. And I told them the act of like creating the art is becoming a commodity, but the actual intelligence behind the art is still where human beings are, being reliant on. And I was like, just take the AI, give it your brain's input, and it will create a piece that may have taken you 2 hours in 2 minutes. And I was like, that's how you win.
And I think, another good point to that is that from a leadership perspective, it also allows you to put people and only have them start to really execute the things that you really prefer for them to be working on. So again, is it nice to have these? Going back to my example of the infographic, is it nice to have an infographic for a client? Absolutely. with the workload that our designers have, we want them to be focusing on client producing work. We want them to be focusing on, and we want them to be focused on different things like that. If we can have tools and processes that take these type of things, that take these simple, more tasks off of their plate, imagine how much more efficient your team can be when now all they have to do is focus on the big picture projects, the stuff that truly only they can do, the stuff that you truly pay them to do and now execute. Now your clients are getting more attention. Your clients are getting more quality work. They feel more the ability to actually more execute on what they're good at, what their skill sets are. Because that's what we want them to do. Now they can actually focus on design, production, motion graphics, doing all of these other cool things, and really being innovative in that space. So as you were saying that's just another thought that I thought of, the benefit when they don't have to do more menial tasks and things like this, that AI can literally start to take off of your plate.
100%. And to kind of piggyback off that, the last example that I was going to give was how, our CEO was able to create a whole ebook marketing campaign, something that maybe taken even us or even another business, 2-3 weeks to really compile, put it in. He was able to do it, in 10-15 minutes. But what I really wanted to piggyback off of there was, it's what allows, in our case, and for many other businesses, obviously to be efficient and productive, but for us to focus on what I believe, social media agencies, marketing agencies, what agencies are really meant to do, which is build relationships with their clients. And even on top of that, build true relationships between the brand and the consumer. And that's what I really try to tell people. And it's like, we're taking away the parts that are a commodity for everybody. Sure, the thinking was really where brands spent a lot of, agencies spent a lot of time, but we were wasting so much money. Brands themselves, businesses themselves were wasting so much money just to get 6 people in a room together just to pontificate ideas. The ideas are now, like I said, a commodity. It's the relationship, it's the feeling, it's human to human approach that agencies will have, that brands will still have, that will allow them to win, because AI will impact everything and everybody.
Yep.
I want to ask you about, I'm sure you've seen this, but it goes actually a tool that you showed me, but one called Resemble.io, I believe, the one that can take my voice and essentially act as if I was having this podcast without me even actually being here. And I want to dig into your thoughts. I want to see what you're thinking about that. But give people an idea, if they haven't seen it yet. There was a video on TikTok of Drake and I believe Future or Drake or 21 Savage singing WAP by Megan Thee Stallion, and it really wasn't them. And it went viral, and this technology reminded me of that.
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, I saw a few similar things like that. But what I saw was what's really kind of jacking up the music industry right now is using voiceover tools to compile new art. So basically what was happening is people are using a combination of all of these different tools. People are able to take something like a chat GPT, literally put in an artist's previous lyrics. So this is, now I'll show you another use case I saw for this that was actually kind of cool when it comes to like speeches, actually. But in this situation, what they were doing is they were taking an artist's lyrics from a bunch of their different songs, placing it into it, then using a tool like a chat GPT or something like that to basically write another version of a song, using their same tonality, cadence, all of those different things. So, and then on top of that, they're using tools like Resemble and literally putting in voice samples. So you put in all of these different voice samples. And what a tool like Resemble does is, based upon the voice samples, once you now can put in text, it can now, based upon your voice samples, spit out this text in your voice. So then I saw 2 different ones that went viral. I saw one of a song by Jay-Z. I saw another one that was a song with Drake and The Weeknd.
Oh my God.
It had all of their cadences. It had, and again, obviously it's still in the beta phases of it. So when you listen to it closely, you're like, that kind of sounds like Jay-Z, but it doesn't. It kind of sounds like Drake or The Weeknd, but it doesn't. But the scary part was that once it starts to optimize and get better, it will get to the place, like everything does, where it'll be very hard to indistinguish Lorenzo's natural voice and when I'm able to put it in a tool like Resemble and what that voice is able to spit out. So you're right. I dropped that tool to some of our team so that people can see it, so that people can start to put in cliff notes and different things like that, and then type in a funny sentence and then see that and then listen to that voice, and people are like, shoot, that does sound like me. So yeah, these are the things that do make people nervous about AI. Because again, what is intellectual property? What is that legitimate fear of quality, I guess, for lack of a better term. And actually, it's not quality. I think it's authenticity and being genuine. So, for example, based upon the example that I said, the idea is true that I can say, okay, here's some talks that Lorenzo has done in the past. Boom. So now that you got my voice, I can then go into Chat GPT and have Chat GPT create content for me to be some kind of expert. I can then run it back through this tool, then put out a series of YouTube videos or a series of all of these different things. And I didn't do any of that. I didn't create the content. I didn't record the content. I didn't do anything. And that entire process was created by AI. So when you talk about the fears of it, I think there is a fear of watered downness, for lack of a better term, of all of those different things. And that's interesting when you start to see that, when you start to see, again, examples of this different type of stuff, because it'll get to a place where you'll listen to something and you'll be like, is that Kaushal? Is that not Kaushal? It sounds a lot like it. Even have you ever seen the video? I forget the company, but it's they specialize in deep fake technology. You familiar with that by chance? Have you ever seen the video of the guy that does the Morgan Freeman?
Yes.
And again, so you see him recording it at top.
Right.
And then you see the bottom of the deep fake and what it comes out. So when you start to look at all of that different type of stuff, you're like, it's a fear. I can see why people get nervous about this type of stuff, even though people like you and I are open-minded, optimistic. Use cases like what we're talking about, I see the legitimacy and the fear, however, and why people feel the way that they feel about it, whether or not they can stop it. And I think that's, again, the ultimate conversation that you mentioned in the beginning is your fear won't mean anything when it's all said and done.
100%.
Your fear is not going to stop any of this, no matter how you feel about it.
Definitely not. I'm super interested because immediately when you mentioned that, my mind went back to 15-year-old Kaushal, and I was like, man, the prank calls and the messages to the girlfriends and boyfriends. That's crazy.
It's funny. I've actually I've had people talk about using tools like Chat GPT to actually help them have conversations with people that they were going to go on a date with, people that they were going to break up with, all types of different things like that. So it's funny that you mentioned something like that. Again, you talk about the use cases of this type of stuff. People are like, yeah, I literally use that to help me have this conversation with this person in my personal life, nothing to do with business and social media.
And people, and I, like you said, there's real fear, and I'm super empathetic and understanding of that for people. But I always try to tell them, like, there's always the pro side of it, and if you really, really want to see the good of it, the good is there. I think about all the 100%. People who are very introverted, and if they are able to utilize AI to allow them,
that's a good point,
conversations with people because they themselves have a hard time doing it. So I was like, there's always a good thing.
That's a super great point. I hadn't even thought about that. People who find it hard to articulate themselves and things like that, but it doesn't mean that they're not a wealth of knowledge up here.
Exactly. So, I mean, AI, I honestly think we may just dedicate a whole episode one day just to straight up AI, because the more and more I keep talking about it with you, the more and more we keep, just exploring it. It's just every time something more and more blows my mind, and I know we're still in the early days of really where.
Yeah. And it's the reason that I think it's a good idea to keep discussing it, it's extremely applicable to social media. It's extremely applicable to going viral, and it's all of these different things apply to brands leveraging these things for better or for worse when it comes to social media.
100%. All right, awesome. Well, I think that's really all I had on the AI front. The last topic really that I want to deep dive with you on is what I mentioned earlier, which is brands and how are they looking at influencers and creators? How are they looking at that from just as an actual contractor phase How are they looking at it as an internal employee advocacy approach and their team members? And even something new that you actually presented to me that I'm interested to talk about, which is de-influencers, a little bit of the opposite of influencers, what we're seeing in the industry there. But let's just kind of take it back from the high level point of view for brands and, really what they're doing. I think this is honestly one of the most beautiful times when it comes to influencers and creators, and really the opportunity and impact that it has for businesses and brands. I'd like to hear your thoughts on just, what you're seeing. What are your initial thoughts before we kind of deep dive into a few of these points?
Yeah, I was actually looking. Our team had a pretty interesting long thread conversation about this. So I think a few things. Where do you want to start? You want to start with the positive, or you want to start with the advocacy and influencing, or you want to start with the de-influencing?
Let's head into your realm for a little bit in the world of LinkedIn and like just actual true employee advocacy. And then we can kind of tie it together with what I'm seeing with influencers and creators. But why do you believe employee advocacy is something all brands and businesses should be considering?
So I think there's a few points that I'd say of why it should be considered. The first is it's leveraging some of a brand's most important assets, and that's their people. And it's leveraging their people in multiple ways. It's leveraging people for their expertise. Again, depending on your agency, like our agency, we have people who are experts in paid ads, people who are experts in social selling, people who are experts in creative and account management. We have all of these people who all they do day and night is live and breathe these spaces. So it's leveraging their expertise. It's leveraging their followers. That's one of the beautiful things I love about having a diverse brand. You have people who will engage with some of your team members because of their diversity of thought, because of who they are, who may then, because of that relationship, then decide to engage with your brand, or who frankly may never have engaged with your brand had it not been for having the team members that you have. So it's leveraging their followers. It's leveraging all of those things. So that's one of the biggest reasons that I think about. Some other things that I think about is it's a great opportunity to empower your team. So now you have all of these people who are a wealth of knowledge. And the fact that you can actually say, hey, we want to put your face out there. We know how great you are. Our clients know how great you are, but we would love to actually push that out there, highlight some of the thoughts that you have, because, when you get on your client calls, you make so many different great points that we actually think a lot of people really need to hear. So it's a great way to empower your team to do that. Those are some of the biggest reasons that I think that if you're a brand, you should absolutely be leveraging brand advocacy. And then you have tools on places. So there's tools that we know that are more third party, like Bamboo and different things like that, that start to allow you to essentially make it easy for your team to disseminate content and things like that. The reason I bring this up is because brand advocacy, when done properly from an operations standpoint, also allows people to do what you pay them to do. When I give our workshops about how to operationalize LinkedIn from a marketing, operations, and sales point, one of the things I talk about is that, your salespeople aren't content creators. That's not what you pay them to do. Right. Do they need to be out there? Do people need to see their face? Absolutely. But you don't pay them to do that. You pay them to have the conversation, to open up doors, to be the boots on the ground, to do all of those different types of things. So when you properly set up your employee advocacy in a way that operationalizes that content distribution and dissemination, you make it easy for everybody to play the role that they're supposed to play. And that way, it rises everybody when you're able to do that. So and I'm thinking about some of those things. But this is what I was also going to say. So now platforms are making it even easier. LinkedIn, a lot of people don't know, has actually beta launched their own version of an employee advocacy tool within your own company page right now. So now you don't actually have to go through and use like a Bamboo or some of these other things. You can go right into your LinkedIn company page and start to actually create processes and operations where a team member, for example, can go into a place that holds all of your content, different things like that. One click share, throw a comment on it and keep on going about it. So it's going to be easier than ever to leverage leverage your employees when it comes to this different type of stuff. So those are some of my initial thoughts of why I think it. And as you can hear me talking about it, super passionate. I think it's something that brands do not do often enough. And it's, for lack of a better term, it's free. It's costing you nothing but the time that you're already paying for. Yes, you can go out and run more paid ads campaigns, and you can do all these other different types of things right there, but you can also just leverage the team that you already have.
I agree. And there's obviously, I believe, many reasons why, whether it's they're not good at it, they're not able to facilitate the content that their employees would like to share, the employee themselves, they don't know how to motivate them and kind of get them involved. There are a lot of definitely challenges and hurdles. And one of the things that we do at our agency is definitely help brands and businesses understand how, from a social standpoint, they could really use this advocacy, and how do we make it a fun system, whether it's amplifying it, creating leaderboards, incentivizing employees to do it. But I think we're really now starting to hit that next level of employee advocacy, and which is why I'm excited to talk about it today, which is leveraging your own influencers and creators. A lot of the time, and this works much more and beneficial for larger brands because they have the workforce. I mean, for people that don't know, companies like Walmart and Amazon employ more than 1 million people, larger than some city populations, right? So as you are a bigger brand, you have no idea the amount of talent that you have, within your walls of your organization. You have no idea the creative people that you have that are able to understand the nuances of the social platforms and create naturally for them. I mean, you'd be surprised how many, people that work at these different places. One of us saw on McDonald's, like this literally McDonald's, register lady on TikTok blowing up because she talks about how she's the McDonald's register lady. And I'm like, right? So it's like, it wasn't even somebody that was a creator. It wasn't somebody that was an influencer. It wasn't somebody that you had to bring in and search for. It was somebody in your organization that was already empowering the brand, already doing a good job representing it. So what I'm interested to see now is with TikTok, with the way the other platforms start to make creative easier and more natural and seamless to use. How do you as an owner, how do you as an executive think about to leverage those employees? Think about the employee advocacy of allowing them to create content that they naturally love to make and put out without having to force them with the content that the brand itself is creating.
100%.
So that's what I'm fascinated by in this whole influencer, micro influencer, creator realm. It's like, I really do believe it had its first wave and a lot of people felt like it was dying down, but I'm a huge believer right now that it's one of the most impactful things that businesses and brands should be thinking about. And something I know we're passionate about here at Social Lean, and how do we help our clients, with that aspect of employee advocacy and creating content for their different socials. It's interesting. So I'm, interested in, we've talked a little bit about influencers, we've talked about creators, we talked about employee advocacy, we talked about really the benefits of all, what influencers can do. And we could dive even deeper into it and really why we believe it's a impactful business strategy. But let's, I think we've had a good episode of ups and downs, pros and cons, positives, negatives. What is the negative thing around influencers and creators that you're seeing? And it's a term that I don't know who necessarily coined, but I didn't know about it until you presented it to me. But this thing called de-influencers. I don't know what your thoughts are about de-influencers and what they're doing in the world.
So I'm taking some notes because there's a few things I want to get onto that. So there's an idea called de-influencing that's starting to get popular. It's from my understanding of it, it's not necessarily what the term I'll use is mudslinging. It's not necessarily talking aggressively bad about a brand, but that's part of it. But there's kind of three things that I've been seeing when it comes to hiring an influencer to de-influence, essentially, which is again just so opposite of what we think of when we think about influencers. We think of these people who say, here's this wonderful water bottle and that don't cost me $9.99. Let's kind of go through all these things and you should buy it here and use my link in this, and this. So there's three things. that I'm reading of why. Some of these are benefits to the influencer, some of these are benefits to the brand. The first thing is that the idea behind this is that it's supposed to come off as being more honest. So it's supposed to be a little bit more transparent and a little bit more authentic from an influencer's perspective. If you're getting on here and you're not just talking about all these positive things, it's not just this clear paid promotion. If you get on here and you actually talk about real feedback, real honesty, real thoughts, the negative things about this stuff, it's supposed to make you come off as being a truly more authentic influencer. So therefore, people will start to trust you no matter when you start to talk about the other products and positive things, because it's not just, Kaushal isn't just a pay for hire person. Kaushal doesn't just, if somebody pays Kaushal X amount of money, he will get on there and tell you that this right here is the best thing that's ever been invented ever. And there'll never be another thing that's like it. It'll make you come off as more credible if you start to give the reviews about different things that aren't always promoting just the sell of it. It's being a little more honest. So that's the first thing. There is an aspect of bad reviews. So I haven't seen it as, I've seen a few examples of this, a little bit more extreme, where people are paying to have this happen for a specific competitor that's happening. I have seen that. I have seen it happen a few different times. That's not the biggest use case for it, but again, it is out there. The third thing is that actually, and this is what's kind of interesting, it's actually de-influencing is supposed to be this conversation about influencing as a whole.
Okay.
And how you shouldn't always take what an influencer says as a fact. So right now we have this culture where if an influencer says it, if a person says it, it absolutely must be true.
Right.
So now the idea is that it's getting influencers who are basically saying that, just because I'm an influencer, just because an influencer gets on and says it, that's not gold. That's not the end of that conversation right there. So now it's encouraging people again to not take it, for lack of a better term, as gospel every time that you hear an influencer get on there. That you start to take that there are other things in mind, other things in play that you should really take into consideration. So these are some of the things, full transparency, that our team has actually been digging into. So as you know, when I brought this up, I started saying this article. That's the first thing I did is I said, hey, team, what is everybody's thoughts on this? So, do we have brands that have asked for this? Are we currently doing this for anybody? Let's have this type of conversation. So that's what we're seeing so far from some of the feedback from the team. But this is definitely something that we're absolutely going to be staying on and continuing to look into, to continuing to dive into, see strategically when it makes sense. It's interesting. It's definitely flipping something on its head.
It's a very interesting concept and idea, because in the general sense, I mean, you know me, I'm a very optimistic, positive type of, glass half full mentality. So the sense of brands, leveraging and paying these influencers to promote and say good things, naturally makes sense. But I agree. I think in this industry and over time, you're right. A lot of it has just become oversaturated. Influencers are just taking on money from anywhere just to get the money and promote things. And I think to kind of bring it back to, like you said, authenticity and really make it real, de-influencing, even though it may sound negative in its connotation to people, I think it's going to be good for the industry. I think it's going to bring value. I think it's going to make things more real. I think brands are going to appreciate it. Influencers are going to appreciate it. And it's not going to always make influencers feel like, hey, I only got to say good things, even about things I don't like, or even about things I don't care about. I think, sure, there is that side of it, where you could hire an influencer and talk bad mouth about a competitor. But I like to think about that as like, sporting teams. It's like, if I'm a fan of a certain sporting team, obviously I'm going to say bad things about another sporting team. So I don't think you dig too deep into situations like that. I think you really take it for those real influencers that are like, hey, is this something good or is this something not good?
100%.
And use it as actual value. So that's why I'm interested. I think it's actually a pretty unique concept for sure.
Yeah, no, and that's why I even said that, the using it just to talk badly about a direct competitor, is that a use case of this? Yes. Is that something that, again, focused on or everything else? No. I'll say something else that you said that jogged another thought, because I do think that what this means for the consumer is actually going to be interesting and in a more positive light. So the other thing that I'm seeing that this is talking about is that people are using de-influencing to also have conversations about the environment and cost per goods.
True.
So again, now people are starting to ask more questions about what's the environmental ramifications of this product that's happening. What's the true cost of this? Where's the labor coming from? All of these other things right there. So now, as you can imagine, that has that snowball effect of, again, brands are going to have to be more conscious of how they're providing, where they're doing, what their stuff is doing to the environment. Which again, ultimately, for us at the end of the day, it does help us live in a better world, for lack of a better term. So I do absolutely believe that there are some very positive, strategic uses to de-influencing, even though, as you can imagine, it immediately has a negative connotation as soon as you start to say that. And again, like we've talked about all episode, people are always going to take things to the extreme. You are always going to take a new concept and people are always going to take it all the way over here. That's going to happen with every single thing that we'll probably talk about. So you can't look at the extreme cases of that and try to use that as a judge of the whole of the entirety of whatever we're talking about.
I agree. You're right. It's human tendency. We always love to take things to the furthest extent. So I think it's a unique curve in the industry. And like I said, I do believe we're in that still hot period. So it's gonna be interesting to see, how brands are starting to approach it. But like you mentioned, something deeply we're thinking about here at Socially, and something that we're testing out with our clients. And we'll be excited to share more news around it as the industry starts to adopt it more and more.
Absolutely.
I think that's, as far as like all of the topics go, that really is everything we have today. Any closing ideas, closing remarks, anything important that we wanted to share with our people? Otherwise, I think this is going to be very impactful for businesses to start to think about specifically the 3 areas that we really focus.
Yeah, no, I think this is some good stuff. Obviously, we'll pick this up in 2 weeks here. I'm sure the beautiful thing about social media, as we know, it's ever changing. So we'll have some new good stuff to talk about, probably even some next level conversations about some of the things we've spoken about in our last couple of episodes. But once again, it was a wonderful conversation. I always enjoy spending just a little bit of time with you, man.
Likewise. And I appreciate you all for watching. As always, we do it really for you all. So thank you for the support. We'll be back in 2 weeks and we'll have another jam-packed episode. There's some exciting stuff as always happening in social. But please leave comments, please leave your feedback and thoughts. We'd love to make this a little bit more of a dialogue than just a back and forth as well. But till then, Lorenzo and Kaushal, we're signing off.
Oh yeah, one thing I almost forgot. Stay tuned. We got some guests coming up in our next couple podcasts.
Hey.
So yeah, as we start to do that, so we don't want y'all to get tired of hearing our voices. So that's kind of the next phase of what we'll be doing. Stay tuned. I think we may even be able to have a special guest for our next one that we release. So look forward to you all joining us in a few weeks.
All right, Seriously Social signing out. Thank you, everybody.
Signing off.